Here's a 900-word story based on your title. The sun was just beginning to dip below the jagged horizon, painting the dusty plains of Cedar Creek in a fiery orange glow. In the small town that clung stubbornly to the edge of civilization, everyone knew everyone else's business, or at least, they thought they did. Yet no one could have foreseen the storm that was about to descend on the unsuspecting townsfolk. Rancher Luke McCall was a man of few words and even fewer friends. His broad shoulders and calloused hands spoke of years of hard labor, of battling the harsh elements and the unpredictable cattle that roamed his land. He had a reputation for being both fair and relentless, depending on which side of the fence you found yourself. But underneath his rugged exterior, there was a man capable of sudden, unthinkable impulses. It all began one sweltering afternoon. The heat pressed down on the town like a heavy blanket, and the smell of hay mixed with sweat and dust filled the air. Luke was working on his property, fixing a fence that had been battered by a recent storm. He was almost finished when he noticed her, Clara, the mayor's daughter, struggling with a sack of feed near the edge of his land. "Hey there," he called, wiping sweat from his brow. "Need a hand?" Clara looked up, startled. She was known for her stubborn streak, and most men in town were wary of approaching her. "I've got it," she replied sharply, though her voice betrayed exhaustion. "I can manage." Luke raised an eyebrow but stepped closer anyway. "Careful," he said, his voice low, almost cautionary. "That bag's heavy. You could hurt yourself." Clara hesitated for a moment, then gave a small nod. She shifted the sack, and that's when it happened. Her hand brushed against his as he steadied the bag. A jolt ran through him, unexpected and unwelcome. He stepped back immediately, knowing the line he had just come dangerously close to crossing. Don't move your hand there," Clara said, her eyes wide with warning. "Don't take advantage." Luke swallowed hard. Her words weren't just a warning, they were a boundary, a line drawn in the dirt. Yet something inside him, something darker and more impulsive than he liked to admit, stirred. He had always prided himself on self-control, on being a man who respected limits. But in that fleeting moment, when the world seemed to narrow down to the heat, the dust, and the rapid beating of his heart, reason faltered. He reached out, but not in the way she expected. Instead of taking her hand or pressing his advantage, he grabbed the feed bag from her arms with one swift motion, setting it down safely. Clara blinked, confused. "Careful, Clara," he said, his voice steady now, though the tension hadn't fully left his shoulders. "You've got strong arms, but that's no reason to risk an injury." For a moment, there was silence. Then Clara laughed nervously, the sound sharp and brittle like the wind rustling through the dry grass. I guess I underestimated you," she admitted. "Most men in this town wouldn't have thought twice about ignoring my warning." Luke shrugged, a faint smirk tugging at the corner of his lips. "Most men are fools. I try not to be." But as the days passed, the memory of that touch, and of Clara's fierce warning, haunted him. He couldn't stop thinking about how close he had come to doing something unforgivable, something that would have shattered the fragile trust between them. It gnawed at him, a persistent itch that refused to be ignored. One evening, as the sun dipped low once more, Clara appeared at the edge of his property again. This time, she carried nothing but a small basket of freshly picked herbs. "I thought you might like some tea," she said, her voice softer now, less guarded. Luke accepted the basket, his hands trembling slightly. "Thanks," he said simply. I owe you an apology for the other day. For nearly crossing a line." Clara shook her head. "You didn't cross it," she said. "You stopped yourself. That matters more than you think." Her words were like a bomb, easing the tension that had coiled inside him. They sat together on the porch, sipping tea as the sky shifted from orange to purple. Conversation flowed easier now, laughter threading through the quiet evening. And yet, beneath it all, Luke remained acutely aware of the fine line he had skirted, the impulse that could have destroyed everything. Days turned into weeks, and the incident became a story neither of them spoke about openly. But it changed something in Luke. He realized that strength wasn't about taking what you wanted or giving in to every urge. True strength was restraint, and the courage to respect boundaries even when it was hardest to do so. By the time winter rolled into Cedar Creek, bringing with it frost-covered mornings and long, lonely nights, Luke and Clara had formed a bond built on trust and mutual respect. The townsfolk noticed it, of course, whispering about the rancher and the mayor's daughter. But Luke didn't care. He knew what mattered, the quiet understanding between two people who had faced temptation and fear, and had chosen the right path. And sometimes, in the stillness of the night, when the wind moaned across the plains and the stars glimmered cold and distant, Luke would think back to that scorching afternoon. He would remember the warning in Clara's eyes, the firmness in her voice, and the sudden, unthinkable impulse that he had resisted. And he would smile, because in that small, decisive moment, he had proven to himself that some lines were never meant to be crossed. Cedar Creek would continue to grind through the seasons, storms would batter fences, and cattle would wander where they pleased. But the story of Luke McCall and Clara, a story of restraint, respect, and the quiet triumph of self-control, would linger in the air, whispered on the wind to anyone wise enough to listen. And in the end, that was the real unthinkable act, choosing honor over desire, and realizing that true courage often came not in action but in knowing when to hold back. If you want, I can also make 5 image prompts for this story, perfect for a YouTube thumbnail and video visuals. Do you want me to do that next?